This week at Interior, part 2 of our look back at some of the biggest stories of 2013. For much of the Northeast United States, 2013 was a year to rebuild from the devastation caused by Hurricane Sandy. The October 2012 superstorm caused more than 150 deaths and was second only to Hurricane Katrina in terms of damage, some estimated $65 billion worth. Interior was among several federal, state, and local agencies joining forces to help restore communities and infrastructure battered by the storm. In May, Secretary Jewell announced the release of $475 million in disaster relief funding, the money to repair, rebuild, and reopen parks, refuges, and other interior assets that were damaged by the storm. Throughout the rest of 2013, Interior would roll out a number of projects, grants, and jobs programs aimed at restoring coastal wetlands to protect them from future storms. For more than half the nation in 2013, the story wasn't a storm, it was extreme drought conditions and the ever-present danger of wildfires. In May, Secretary Jewell took to the skies over Idaho with Bureau of Land Management smoke jumpers at the National Interagency Fire Center in Boise and saw firsthand how forces are deployed when a fire is first reported. Later, the Secretary joined U.S. Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack to explain how federal agencies are collaborating in the effort to protect Americans from wildfires. In June, 19 firefighters lost their lives fighting the Yarnell fire in Arizona. Secretary Jewell visited the incident command post and directed flags to be flown at half-staff at all Interior assets in honor of the fallen firefighters, and she pledged whatever assistance Interior could provide. She would later testify on Capitol Hill, telling lawmakers that the extended drought conditions in the western states could contribute to a record number of wildfires. In August, the National Multi-Agency Coordinating Group elevated the national fire preparedness to level 5, the highest level, for the 5th time in the last 10 years. At that point, nearly 32,000 wildfires had already burned some 3.5 million acres, but the worst fire of the season was about to break out. The Rim Fire would be the largest blaze in the history of Yosemite National Park and one of the largest in the history of the state of California. The fire was largely contained by the end of August, but some areas would continue burning into October.
Is unreal.
On a hot day in June, President Obama released his climate action plan to create jobs and cut carbon pollution.
As a president, as a father, and as an American, I'm here to say we need to act.
The plan has Interior playing an important role in taking steps to cut both carbon pollution and to expand homegrown clean energy. President Obama called it our moral obligation to leave behind a cleaner, more stable environment. In August, as part of the President's Climate Action Plan, the Secretary traveled through North Dakota's Bakken region and inspected new innovative technologies used by some companies to capture natural gas and reduce methane emissions. She toured Alaska in September, where climate change has been a constant refrain, whether talking to Native Alaskans in their communities, energy producers, or those who staff the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. Climate change and energy development also a key agenda item as Secretary Jewell headed up the U.S. delegation in September to the Pacific Islands Forum in the Marshall Islands. And Interior played a key role in the part of the President's plan that aims to create jobs by deploying domestic clean energy resources. The Bureau of Ocean Energy Management this year oversaw the nation's very first competitive lease sales for commercial offshore wind energy leasing, the first off the coast of New England, the second offshore Virginia. And by year's end, a third site had been proposed, this one off the coast of Maryland. Interior's efforts are all part of achieving the Climate Action Plan's goal of approving 20,000 megawatts of renewable energy on public lands by 2020. 2013 marked another important year in strengthening the nation-to-nation relationship between Indian country and the U.S. government. In a ceremony held at Interior in March, the President signed the Violence Against Women Act. The updated law includes important provisions for federally recognized tribal communities. The $1.9 billion land buyback program established under the Cobell settlement took several steps forward this year. The Land Buyback Initiative helps free locked-up land interests across Indian country by giving interested individual owners an opportunity to receive payments for voluntarily selling their land and putting it into a federal trust. This in turn makes the land easier to develop for the benefit of the tribe of jurisdiction. And now tribes with the most fractionated lands are able to participate in the land buyback program right away, providing more flexibility and transparency for more tribal governments. In August, the Secretary convened the first meeting of the White House Council on Native American Affairs to make federal agencies work better together to advance the interests of federally recognized tribes. And in November, more than 500 tribal nations sent their representatives to the 5th White House Tribal Nations Conference hosted by Interior. The conference gives representatives a direct pipeline to the president and the members of the White House Council on Native American Affairs and the president's cabinet. This year's conference was the largest gathering of tribal members so far and included the participation of 13 members of the cabinet. Throughout all of 2013, Secretary Jewell pursued a top priority for the department to forge a deep and abiding connection between young people and the great outdoors. In her speech at the National Press Club in October, the Secretary fully outlined her conservation vision and goal of engaging the next generation in understanding and stewarding public lands.
The millennial generation, representing my children, now young adults aged 18 to 33, is larger, it's more urban, and it's more diverse than any generation in our history. But research also shows that this generation cares deeply about the planet and wants to make a difference in their careers. Yet they've grown up being more disconnected from the natural world than ever before. We're going to need a whole new generation of wildlife biologists, of park rangers, of scientists, and other professionals to care for our lands and waters.
The Secretary called for partnerships in all 50 states by 2017 to create more opportunities for outdoor recreation, to provide educational opportunities for at least 10 million K-12 students each year, to engage 1 million youth volunteers in support of public lands, and provide 100,000 work and training opportunities to the nation's young people. And 2013 was a year when many of us paused to mark the anniversaries of historic events that still shape our lives. In July, hundreds of thousands of visitors descended upon Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, to remember the 3 days in July of 1863 when two armies, one wearing Union blue, the other Confederate gray, battled here in an epic struggle that would help to turn the tide of the Civil War. But that was only half of the anniversary story. Secretary Jewell was among the thousands who traveled to Gettysburg in November to mark the 150th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. That speech, a mere 272 words and delivered in just over 2 minutes, was part of the November 1863 ceremony dedicating the Soldiers' National Cemetery for those who had fallen in the Battle of Gettysburg some 4.5 months earlier. In Washington, the memorial to President Lincoln was the focal point of another anniversary in 2013, the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s immortal "I Have a Dream" speech. President Obama joined former Presidents Clinton and Carter and many other luminaries on the very steps where Dr. King spoke on August 28, 1963.
The March on Washington teaches us that we are not trapped by the mistakes of history, that we are masters of our fate, but it also teaches us that the promise of this nation will only be kept when we work together. We'll have to reignite the embers of empathy and fellow feeling, the coalition of conscience that found expression in this place 50 years ago.
That's a look back at some of the biggest stories of 2013. Best wishes for a safe and happy new year from This Week at Interior.